All right, so here we go. Quick quilt boxes. So I live in Michigan, and it can get pretty cold. This was recommended to me when I first started out. Actually, that's where I sourced these from the gentleman that recommended it to me. And it's worked well for me. So I'm not gonna quit now. May experiment a little bit more in the future and try and run without them, possibly, and change it up a little bit. But I've had success, so why change it? And I just want to go over them. So this is a brand new one. This is going into use this year. I actually have it backwards. You remove your inner cover, obviously your lid and your inner cover, and then the quilt box goes on. This is nothing more than a medium. If you had some deeps that were all munched up on an end from prying them and breaking them apart and everything like that with inspections over the years, you could rip one down. Doesn't have to be a medium. One dimension that's important is inside here. You want to make sure that you have, it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be exactly like this, but you want to keep in mind that you want to have enough room for possible emergency feeding, which these are perfect. Hive Alive fondant patties, when you need to emergency feed, fits right underneath there. And they can get to it. You cut them open. I've done another video on it. I'll probably do one in the future. So anyways, this goes on, and then your inner cover, and then your outer cover. So contents on the inside. This is where it all happens. So screen, obviously big enough, small enough so that they can't get through it. So and so that air can flow through. The other reason why we have this lip right here, and also we have a mouse guard stapled inside there. And I do use discs as well, so I can close them off completely. I have some new discs I need to install. So mouse guard though, because you have an upper entrance on this. If it snows and it blocks your lower entrance, or something happens where there's unfortunately a bunch of dead bees blocking your lower entrance because you have it smaller in the wintertime, and they can't get them out, they can't carry the dead out, and that gets blocked, they still have another entrance. So we have an entrance up on the top. Again, the feeder shim area for mountain camp, candy boards, fondant, you name it, any of your hard feed over the winter, emergency feed, you can fit in there. So anyways, back to the contents on these. Last year, because people will use burlap, people will use pine chips. Saw a guy use old couch foam, old couch seat cushion foam. Yeah, so I guess anything will work, but anything will work to keep the heat in, but there's twofold here. You want the heat to stay in. It's kind of like a fine dance. You want the heat to stay in, but you want the moisture and the humidity to escape. So the heat to stay in and the moisture to escape. I used the burlap and the pine last year so that when I wanted to see how they were doing in case I needed to add anything, I could just peel it back and see. I didn't like how fine my pine chips were last year. I have much bigger this year, and I'm going to eliminate the burlap. I would not recommend using both. It kept the heat in well, obviously, but I don't believe it let through enough of the moisture. Now this burlap didn't get mold on it or anything. It actually held up pretty good. Obviously there was different colonies, so you can have different results with different colonies. But it held up well. I'm just not going to do the burlap and the pine. I think it was too constrictive as far as airflow. I had a good survival rate, don't get me wrong. But I am going to switch it up. I am going to use pine chips and eliminate the burlap. But I liked being able to view easy instead of having to dig through pine chips, because you're not gonna just take a look in one spot. they might not be there. That's what I've noticed, because they're in a different area clustered over here. So you need to, if you're going to look and you want, you know, to know what's going on inside there, you kind of need to be able to move it all. So I bought some bigger pine chips. I should be able to pull them back, dig little holes, and I'll be able to see through there. So that's the plan for this year. No more burlap, going with pine chips. The ones that are already set up with the burlap already in them, I may run those again. But for the most part, any of these new ones, such as this one, they're just going to be pine chips. Pine chips inside here. So a couple other things. Obviously, if you're having the air go up inside there, the air needs to escape somewhere. So yes, these are just like the entrance, but they're on the opposite side of the screen. And then they're also screened with the smaller mesh so that nothing can get in there. This one is for rodents. This is going to be their emergency, and they'll actually use it in the spring though. They'll use this upper entrance because usually if you're running a double deep configuration, you're not going to see much activity up here in the beginning. On your nice days in the middle of winter, because hopefully they're still down in the bottom box. Then they're going to work their way into the second box, and then in spring, this is when they're going to start using this entrance more. And then also, obviously, if you're running it double deep and you have the proper weights, if you're happy with your weights, this is all if everything's gone well and you fed well and your weights are good, your top box should be the heaviest, and they should already be in the bottom box. Ideally, they'll survive, they'll move around. It's just harder for them. They don't tend to go down as well as they go up when they're consuming the food. If it's warm enough, then obviously they can move around and break cluster and just, do some searching and discovering where the next move needs to be inside the hive. But anyway, so you don't want this in the middle box. You want this on your top box. Unless you're super concerned and your top box doesn't have enough in it and you want to try and, I guess you can play with it, but I wouldn't be breaking the seal on my double configuration boxes at all anymore. I wouldn't even have done it a couple weeks ago. This is completely glued on all mine, solid. It's not going to come apart during the winter. So the quilt boxes have worked really, really well. Moisture is a big problem, and then obviously heat, in my opinion, is not as much. If you have the population of bees, you're going to have the heat. The moisture is going to be a problem. Also, I do cant all my colonies forward so that if there is any water that comes up and hits my fondant patty, it's going to be absorbed into the quilt box if it comes up with this. But since I now have that fondant patty on top, right, in the center, as they say, if moisture comes up and hits this and it condensates on it, hopefully it'll go around and hit the pine. But if it condensates on it and it runs the length of this on the backside, the moisture to whatever direction is flowing down, and then drips, say at this corner, and your cluster is right here, and you have enough moisture on here that it's constantly dripping down on them, that's a problem. I don't see that happening with all this other airspace, but I've always canted them forward in case you get snow on the landing board or any type of moisture in there. You want it canted forward so that it can run down the sides of your boxes and run out the front door. If it's just pooling on top, and this is very important if you're not running quilt boxes, mine's going to be caught in the pine shavings, and there shouldn't be any issue with extreme moisture in there. But if you're not running it, then you should be concerned, and you definitely should be canted. But again, in early springs, I want all that water that hits here not going in. I want it coming out. So I got mine canted pretty extreme during the non-drawn comb, when I'm not trying to draw a comb, so I don't have to have it perfectly level or anything like that. They're not drawing any comb right now. They're just trying to live. So anyways, I think I got everything on the quilt boxes. I buy mine local. Again, they're just a medium, and they don't even have to be a medium. They could be a shallow. One other thing I did forget to mention, so these upper screen holes, I only put the that's another reason why I wasn't too happy with the burlap and the chips, because it kind of over blocked these. But you want the air to come through up here, come through the pine, and then escape through these holes. Well, I'm not going to plug these holes with the pine. I want actually good airflow inside this area, this top area, right? This top area, so that the airflow helps the moisture get out, and it'll keep them from chilling, frozen to death. Don't pack it tight. You don't need to cram it in here or anything like that. I would be concerned if I was using a couch sofa cushion. That just does not seem to want to breathe to me, but I don't know. But there's a lot of things you can use. Some have recommended cedar. I didn't buy cedar, I bought pine. I've seen also people use burlap and then, you know, nothing else. So just like 3 or 4 layers of burlap, and then they have them folded nice. So when they come and check, if it's super wet, they can just lay another one in. I do like that versus just throwing in pine chips. That seems like a great way to yank that moisture pad out of there and be able to replace it. Then you let the other one dry and you put it back in. I just don't have the burlap to do that. And again, the pine needles will absorb it. You can always get in here as you're looking through and mix up the pine needles, or even take some out if they're super wet and add some fresh. But I've never experienced it being so wet to the point that I had to remove anything. Thank goodness. They have been wet on this side, but they haven't been wet to the point that I needed to take anything out. So that's how I'm running the quilt boxes. I got to put my doors on. I don't really ever close them. Rarely. If there was a robbing from the upper entrance or something like that, I might close them. But this is what I'm going with this year. And we'll see what happens. So that's the plan. One other thing I do when I winterize, I'll just go over this now. I'll show them after I winterize. Again, I'm not probably going to film any winterization or anything like that. So say this is a double deeper, even as a single, it's all the same. So quilt box on top, lid off. I'm going to wrap tar paper. I don't know the thickness, I'll get that. But you can see right here, here's some of my tar paper from last year. So I'm going to wrap tar paper around the 3 sides, but I am going to overlap slightly on the front, but I'm not going to cover the whole front. Obviously, I don't want to cover my entrance. So my tar paper usually goes to about here. Actually, I think you can see the clean lines. Tar paper goes to here and then goes around the 3 sides. And I trim it and I cut these holes out, these quilt box holes. I don't have to worry about cutting this one out because I'm only overlapping just to hold it, and I staple it on. So I do run tar paper. It's black. The heat keeps it nice and warm. That's one of the things I want to experiment with, is do I really need to do the tar paper? But once you've done things and you've done them with success, you're a little reluctant to change anything. So that's the position I'm in right now. It's not the greatest job in the world trying to wrap tar paper on these, but I do trim it to the top here so that the inner cover will go on, and then so that the telescoping outer cover can also clear it. But the tar paper is all the way up to the top, whether it's a double deep or a single deep configuration, into the quilt box. So it's coming up to here. Maybe this year I'll just cut them below so I don't have to cut these circles out. Maybe I'll just run the tar paper to here this year. And that one of the other problems is when you do your checks in the winter with that telescoping cover, it wants to peel that tar paper down, and it was kind of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to go to here and just leave it at that, so that I can get my cover on, because their bees aren't living up here. There's this much space that they can get into, but they're not living up in this area. And this area is designed to let the air out anyway. So let the moisture out. So you got air coming in through the bottom and then going out the top like a chimney. And you'll even see frozen around these from the moisture coming out and then hitting the outside air and freezing. Not so much on them because it's got to pass through the pine, but here you'll see it. And this is also a good spot late in the spring. Early in the spring, late in the winter, when you're concerned, are they in my second box? Are they at the top? Are they starving? What's going on? You just shine a flashlight in here, and sometimes you can see the bees right in here. But again, you can just also take the cover off and just quickly move away your material, whatever you choose to go with, and just peek on the inside. But peek all the way around. You may be bummed that they're not in this corner, not in that corner. Oh, they're not in that corner, and then the last corner you look at it, there they are. So they can become, depending on what type of bee they are, or the genetics, or how they were going in the winter, a lot of variables. That cluster coming out of winter can be very, very small. So be ready to throw some type of emergency feed on it if you can, and be prepared. So anyways, that's how I'm going to do the quilt boxes this year. I appreciate you watching. Thanks for everything. Continue success with your bees, I hope, and we'll catch you later. Thank you.